What do you get if you mix Nirvana with the Beastie Boys and Fight Club? Turns out this. Hey, my name is Brendan, welcome to the channel, which makes every song a little bit more interesting. This video is a deep dive into a weird, unexpected connection between Nirvana and Hanson. You can look at the 90s and split it into two halves. You can split anything into two halves, but you know what I mean. The first half was dark, grungy music, whereas the second half turned into completely polar opposite, bright, fun pop music. And you can put this down to one man. His name is Danny Goldberg. Now, if you are like me and you're a huge fan of Nirvana, that name probably rings a bell. He is the man who managed Nirvana at the very peak of their power. So when Nirvana came to a close, it seemed like Danny Goldberg's journey in music had also reached the end. But just a year later in Oklahoma, there was a talented trio of brothers who were working hard to get their music heard by everyone and anyone they possibly could get to listen. These were, of course, the Hansons, who were not just some sort of nepo group. They were actually really talented, beautiful harmonies, and a really impressive work ethic. It being the mid-90s, there wasn't really any internet or Bebo or Facebook or MySpace, all the rest of that. So what they had to do was get on their bikes, get on their skateboards, and probably rollerblades, stuffing mailboxes and pasting message boards with flyers for their next gigs, and sometimes even cassettes for their demos. This was an unbelievable amount of hard work, and what really was the driving force behind them was their mother, who would actually treat it a bit like their own job. So not only did they have to do all of this groundwork to put their own marketing out there, but they would also have to write a report every night after they were in the studio recording a song or played a gig. They would have to write an essay about that, so they couldn't just, come home and put the feet up and say, "Shut up, mom, you're not my dad, I'm a rock star now," which is probably what I would have done. This method would have been a total shot in the dark, but there are actual stories of them not only pasting their flyers everywhere, but they would stop strangers in the street and ask them, could they sing a song for them? That's a really cool insight into a band I would have thought were just selected from the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse or something like that, So they weren't shy about playing a really poorly attended club or pub. One of their earliest festivals they were playing was attended by about 9 or 10 people, but one of the people in that room was a talent scout for a record label. He stuck around as Hanson were playing an early version of MMMBop, which was more slower and a bit like a classic 90s indie rock track.
Yes, a many relationship in this life, really want to.
He was blown away by their harmonies, timing, and also their incredible lyric writing for a group of such a young age. I'm telling you, listen to those verses and you will be surprised by the deepness within MMMBop. Next thing, he went up to the band, asked for a demo tape, they gave it to him, he brought it back to the label, and lo and behold, whose desk did it land on? But Danny Goldberg's. Legend has it Danny Goldberg listened to that demo for 1 minute and signed them right there, right then. Usually what happens with a pop song is you get the artist, you get them in the studio, you record it, you produce it, you package it, and you sell it around the world. That's almost what happened, but it took a long time to get to that point. And this is actually one of the disaster stories of song recording. So they got into studio. The initial production team behind it were finding it tough to get the right rhythm. They just knew that it wasn't sounding right or as good as it possibly could. So eventually it was taking so long in the recording studio, week after week after week, Taylor's voice began to break and this production team got the bullet, or they said we'll leave, or basically they were replaced, which to be honest I don't think I've ever heard of before. So production team 1 exits, enter the Dust Brothers. You could argue without the Dust Brothers we don't have a clue who the Hanson brothers are. I really don't know how they actually agreed to produce this song by 3 young brothers. It must have been the street cred of Danny Goldberg and his link with Nirvana, because the Dust Brothers up until this point were one of the coolest production teams of the 90s. They started with Paul's Boutique by Beastie Boys.
Ladies in the place are calling out to you. Never was a city kid, true and true. More to me than you'll ever know.
They were also behind the breakout success for Beck.
So why don't you kill me?
And they had loads more interactions and involvements. So somehow they were convinced to come into the studio and work with these 3 brothers from Oklahoma who were aged 9, 11 and 15 at the time. It's just insane. So they get to work and they notice that the song is great, but the chorus just isn't popping like it should do. While the verses were really deep and meaningful, They knew that the chorus was so catchy and fun, just joyful, that they needed to unlock that magic. So what they did first was speed up the tempo. All of a sudden, the entire track started to click and the vibe was incredible. Next challenge was getting the right key and spot for Taylor's voice to hit those high notes throughout the entire song. Don't know how he did that, fair play to Taylor. And then the final elements that layered it all together to give it that nice energy and slight edginess of the 90s is where the Dust Brothers came into their own. Their trademark was their record scratching ability. You listen back to the track now, all of a sudden you will hear so many turntable sound effects over the top layer, and it just kind of adds in that energy and that sound of the 90s. MMMBop went to #1 in 12 countries worldwide. It was used in commercials, in TV shows, in movies, and it still is to this day, 27 years on. That positive reception was noticed pretty much straight away because it started getting airplay on radio stations, and that fast response from fans was seen at their very next mall signing. 10,000 fans showed up, which, as you can guess, was a bit too much for the capacity, so they literally had to shut down the entire shopping mall that day. Danny Goldberg, who was there as the onlooking manager, said that the screams were louder than anything he ever heard or experienced during his time with Nirvana. You might think that that pop success would have discredited the Dust Brothers for any further production jobs. However, their very next job was a pretty cool one. Just a year later, David Fincher asked them to do the soundtrack of Fight Club.
Pilot light might have gone out, letting out just a little bit of gas. That gas could have slowly filled the condo, 1,700 square feet with high ceilings for days and days.
They were the second group that he asked. First off, David Fincher wanted Radiohead to do the soundtrack, which would have been cool, but I think probably too depressing. You cannot compare that soundtrack of Fight Club to anything else on any other movie, ever. It's just a bit of genius. Unfortunately, Hanson were never able to match or follow up on that huge track that they had. I reckon a lot of that is down to the genius of the Dust Brothers. Strangely enough though, Dust Brothers, while they didn't lose their street cred, they never matched or had as successful a song as MMMBop from Hanson. So it's just one of these really weird crossing of paths and planets aligning that the manager of Nirvana, looking for a new job, finds Hanson, gives them their start. The Dust Brothers come in to fix the song and it becomes a worldwide success. And the impact of that song is so big, it ushers in the second half of the 90s decade of music. So you no longer have the dark, edgy, grunge type music filling the charts. It's now replaced by Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC and Spice Girls. Music nerds to this day point towards Hanson's MMMBop as the song which officially stamped out the era of grunge. It's just crazy to think that Hanson were rejected by 12 record labels until the manager of Nirvana gave them their big break, therefore ending the era of grunge music and ushering in this brand new pop phase of the 90s. Another weird thing that I noticed, and I've always actually thought it in my own mind, Taylor, the lead singer, his hair and appearance is so much like a young Kurt Cobain. So was that on purpose? I don't know. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but it is, again, quite strange that the man who was at the forefront of grunge music and the person who was responsible for finishing grunge music have this similarity and the same manager. Mind blown. I think it's just one of the world's weirdest songs because, well, the chorus means nothing, but the verses mean a lot. And it really shouldn't have been made in the first place. The first production team left. The lead singer's voice broke. They brought in the Beastie Boys producers and it somehow worked to become a global success. So hopefully you enjoyed learning a bit more about Hanson's MMMBop. This is the aim of this channel. As a music presenter for over 12 years, my challenge every day is to make every song I play a little bit more interesting for my listeners to enjoy. So that's the aim of this channel. Whatever song it is, I hope that we will make it a little bit more interesting for you to listen to the next time around. If you have any more cool stories or other songs that you think are often written off but have a far more interesting meaning and impact, hit the comments, hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time.